According to Rebrickable, my LEGO collection is worth about $17,000. According to Brickset, which tracks condition, it's worth quite a bit less. And according to some of my friends and family, it is worth, well, pretty much nothing at all. But no matter what way you slice it, I have a lot of LEGO. Some built, some loose, some new sealed in box, and some missing. And I think it's high time to check in on my collection, see what I've got, and see what needs replacing after nearly 35 years of play and love. That's right, we're gonna be building every single minifigure in my LEGO collection. Let's do this. To start off with, let's start with LEGO Castle. This figure is from 1991, came in one set which was given to me by a friend, and has that old gray sword and helmet. With this series, I want to introduce two simple concepts that plague this section of my LEGO collection, and the first is figures I know I should have, but don't. Some of these I know I should have because I have specific parts, like this torso, and some I know I should have because of the sets I own. Many of these fantasy figures are in that category. So many are missing parts, and I've tried to piece them together as best I can for you here. A great example is this fantasy minifigure here, who's supposed to have a really cool helmet that unfortunately I just don't have anymore. This guy's in the same boat. Same exact helmet, actually. I don't even know if they still make that helmet anymore, but it's a bummer that I've lost too. Most of you probably know this, but in case you don't, this is actually just a clip-on face on top of a motorcycle helmet underneath. That's how they make this style of knight's helmet, which will get used later on as well. And here's what it looks like without the mask piece. This one's probably the one that hurts the most out of all of my fantasy minifigures that are missing pieces. On screen you can see what it was supposed to look like, the fantasy king, but I'm missing the crown, the armor, the cape, and his sword is in bad condition. The second concept I want to talk about is part distribution. Take these fantasy era skeletons, for example. I know I could take all of these broken or disparate parts and try to piece together some more complete skeleton figures, but I'd rather distribute all of their parts so that you can see how many figures I have, and then I'll go onto Bricklink later and buy the replacement parts. For whatever reason, the breakage issue isn't affecting these black skeletons, and obviously they're not going to get sun yellowed because, well, they're not white. In my mind, these were always the elite troops of the skeleton army. I just think they look really cool. In reality, these were probably meant to be the actual elite soldiers of the army, and there's a lot that I really like about this to point out. First off is the black speckled armor, helmet, and axe piece. This one's supposed to have the same helmet. I use that helmet all the time, so I'm sure that I've just lost it over the years. And the giant printed shield on this one is an awesome complement to the little bucklers that the regular skeletons have. Moving on, the next original castle theme that LEGO created was called Kingdoms, and in my opinion, it's kind of the most underrated. I don't know how everyone else feels about this. There are two factions. There's the, I believe they're the Lion Knights and also the Dragon Knights. This is the Dragon Knight Wizard. He came in a tiny little poly bag with a tiny little dragon, and I love him to bits. And this is one of the knights for the Lion Knights. You can see the metallic printing on his chest. You can see the new shield. You can see the helmet design, I believe was new to this era. And it also came with a lot of civilians. There were several sets that came with just regular people who were living in this medieval era. Here's the Dragon Knight variation of that earlier knight that we saw. He comes with the dark pearl gray helmet and sword and the green feather in his cap. And look at all of that reflective gold and silver. This guy, unfortunately, I'm missing his... Oh, never mind. I found his torso. He's just kind of the grunt of the Dragon Knights, so now I have one Elite Knight and one Advanced Knight for each side, which balances out pretty nicely, except for that wizard. And speaking of wizards, this is the first new sealed in box set that I'm going to show off that unfortunately I am just refusing to open quite yet. This is Magistro's Tower. This was a gift with purchase that came out a few years ago and is a remake of an original LEGO Castle set that I'm leaving sealed, not for resale value, but for collecting purposes. The original Viking sets are really interesting to me looking back now because I actually didn't buy a single dang one. When I was a kid, my parents bought me a giant bin of somebody else's used Lego, and in it came all of these Vikings. Most of them are incomplete. Here's a couple that are just on display as some of my most complete ones, but several of them are missing heads, missing weapons, missing, various bits and bobs. A lot of the torsos, though, are shared with fantasy figures. You can see this one has that same blue and sand blue or light gray, depending on the figure, motif on the torso, and several of the prints are literally identical. Here's just my big pile of leftover pieces that didn't quite make it into minifigures, unfortunately. But these are ones that I'm supposed to have, so they fall into that category. I haven't bought any Harry Potter sets in a very long time for obvious reasons, so a lot of my minifigures are going to be from the original 2 waves, which I honestly think makes them a little bit more interesting. Like the use of a slope piece here instead of actual skirt piece. Of course, that also means that some of them are suffering from those 2 things earlier with the missing pieces, but some of these older minifigures, this Dumbledore is right after they switched to flesh tone from yellow, and you can see that they left the torso print unchanged underneath for whatever reason. One of the most special things about some of these Harry Potter minifigures to me is that they're actually my fiancés that she had when she was a child. And then when we moved in together, we got to merge them. Several of them are from the same set. So this McGonagall was hers, this Harry was mine. You can see the use of the old 4-stud long wand piece in these, which they certainly do not use anymore. This Flitwick was also hers. Apparently, she at one point had the large Hogwarts set that came out in this wave, and all the minifigures that she brought with her seem to back that up. So I'm kind of bummed that we don't have the whole thing. We don't even have all the minifigures. All we have are these ones, plus the ones that I got from this set, including this Voldemort, that Harry, and another special one coming up. Here's an updated version of Dumbledore from the early one that I have, and you can see that really cool metallic printing on there. Definitely an upgrade. The Dementors are awesome. I love using this frilly cape piece for just some spooky minifigures. I love the use of that bottom leg piece to connect them. And oh, Madame Hooch. I didn't know until this minifigure came out that she has golden eyes, and somebody in the comments is going to have to update me on what that even is about. Here's another minifigure who's missing pieces. Missing the head piece, unfortunately, for this one. And the cape piece, I believe. Here's the Malfoy from the same set. These are all from the Quidditch set. He's missing his head, but I did manage to find his hair and his cape. So just imagine this cape on the other one. And of course, Harry Potter, the Boy Who Lived, is one of the only minifigures from this set who isn't missing any pieces. That broom piece is really cool. Created specifically for this wave, probably for this set, if I had to guess. Here we have another missing hair. But it kind of makes a perfect Quidditch piece. I just wish that it was a little bit easier for them to ride. It looks derpy. And finally, my favorite Harry Potter minifigure, this Hagrid. He shares the same arms of the 4 Juniors Pirates minifigures and has that giant oversized hair piece. And just a very sweet grin. Finally, last but not least, I mentioned that I had this set from the Forbidden Forest. Unfortunately, this is all that remains of Narcissa Malfoy. Switching over from one of the most successful fantasy franchises of the 2000s to, oh boy, they tried. Here we're going to get into the Prince of Persia sets. Minifigures. I only had one set. It features that Dastan, who is unfortunately missing a bunch of pieces, and 2 of these Hasansins, which is the strangest way of spelling that I could imagine. Unfortunately, this one is missing his head cloth turban piece, but both of these head prints are really cool, and the claw ones on that last minifigure are excellent. We're still using that black speckled axe piece from Fantasy, although the skeletons are going back to LEGO's classic roots with the floppy arms. This is the only floppy arm skeleton that I have from the late 90s and early 2000s, but I think alongside his Fantasy counterparts, he is adorable. Gandalf from Lord of the Rings is a minifigure that has been updated very recently with the Rivendell set that I'm looking forward to getting a chance to take a look at. But for a first start, he's awesome. Frodo, also Lord of the Rings. Unfortunately, I'm missing his leg piece, but that little Elijah Wood smile and his printed overalls, again, these are all Lord of the Rings and all fantasy figures are excellent for customs. My Uruk-hais, unfortunately, are missing a couple pieces. These are from breakage, because if you didn't know, that dark red piece from the mid-2000s was very breakable, which, aside from the army building potential of these Uruk-hai minifigures, has led to them becoming incredibly valuable. They're very collectible, and they're very fragile. These ones from this set came in a variety of armor and weapon configurations with original shields, swords, and helmets. Speaking of original helmets, this is one of the things that makes Lord of the Rings as a franchise stand out from all of the other castle and kingdom IPs. The custom helmet, look at the horse that's molded into these helmets. And this one is the same exact thing, but it's printed. Unfortunately, I'm missing the headpiece, but the printings on this, the moldings on this figure feels incredible. Now returning to the Hobbit, we have this Bilbo minifigure. The Sting sword is the most interesting part of this minifigure. Gollum here has an entirely custom molded body, and for a while I was missing some of his arms. He was using battle droid arms to fix them, but they are indeed custom to Gollum. The acquisition of this Boromir figure is actually a fun story. I went to a comic book shop near me that was selling all $4 minifigures. I did a video on this as well, and I found this Boromir. For a second I thought he was the Rivendell version, but still, a fun find. And I also found this Bard at the same time. He is the more valuable version of this minifigure because he has the mud splats on his face. There's a version that doesn't, that is, I guess, less valuable to some people. Fantasy is, and always has been, a tough one for collectors, in particular young collectors, which I was for the majority of my life. While there have been small, cheaper sets in Lord of the Rings and Kingdoms themes, the vast majority of fantasy has and is locked behind large paywalls for as long as I can remember. While I was lucky enough to have one of these, modern-day sets like the Lion Knight's Castle, the Viking Village, Rivendell, and Barad-dûr make it increasingly difficult for young people who are into fantasy to have something to build. While the conversation of LEGO prices is one for a different day, I just wish that LEGO would once again create a semi-consistent, original theme for all of our young sword and shield lovers to get into. I hope you enjoyed going through them with me, and stay tuned through the coming weeks as I go through all my minifigures from other themes, hopefully your favorite. Here's a sneak peek of next week's theme. Until then, thank you for watching.